August 18th, 1944. South China Sea, west of Luzon. Lieutenant Commander Henry Munson peered through the periscope of USS Rasher as twilight gave way to darkness. Through the lens, he counted aircraft. One after another, Japanese patrol planes swept across the darkening sky in systematic patterns. 9 successive contacts. Munson lowered the periscope and turned to his executive officer with a grim expression. Those aren't random patrols. They're guarding something big, something they cannot afford to lose. What neither Munson nor his crew realized in that moment was that they had stumbled upon Japan's last desperate gamble to save the Philippines. Convoy. High 71 carried not just soldiers and supplies, but Japan's final hope of stopping the American juggernaut rolling across the Pacific. Within hours, this single convoy's destruction would force Imperial Japanese headquarters to redraw their entire defensive perimeter, pulling it back 1,000 kilometers. The loss would prove so catastrophic that it would help seal the fate of the Philippines before the battle for them had even begun. The mathematics of Japan's desperation were written in the cargo manifests of 13 ships steaming through typhoon weather toward Manila. Over 5,000 soldiers packed aboard transport Taya Maru. Another 4,755 troops crammed into landing craft depot ship Tamatsu Maru. Thousands more distributed across transports Noto Maru, Hokai Maru, Awa Maru, and Noshiro Maru. Every soldier was desperately needed. Every weapon irreplaceable, every gallon of fuel precious beyond measure. The convoy had departed Moji on August 8, 1944, under the command of Rear Admiral Sadamichi Kajioka, a veteran whose career stretched back to the attack on Wake Island in December 1941. His escort force represented one of the largest concentrations of protective vessels Japan could still assemble. 3 destroyers, Fujinami, Unagi, and Asakaze. 5 Kaibokan escort vessels, 1 escort carrier, Taiyo, with 12 Nakajima attack planes providing air cover. The Japanese Navy had learned through bitter experience that convoys needed protection. They were learning too late. The Philippines stood as the keystone of Japan's defensive arc. American forces controlled the Marianas after the devastating defeat in June. General Douglas MacArthur had publicly promised to return to the Philippines, and Japanese intelligence left no doubt he meant to keep that promise. If the Philippines fell, shipping lanes to the oil fields of the Dutch East Indies, the rubber plantations of Malaya, the rice fields of Indochina would all be cut. Admiral Somu Toyoda, commander of the combined fleet, had stated the calculus with brutal clarity. Without the Philippines, even an intact Japanese fleet would be useless. Pulled back to Japan, it would have no fuel. Retreating south, it would have no ammunition. Operation Show, Victory Operation, represented Japan's strategic response. 4 separate plans covered different invasion scenarios. Show 1 dealt with the defense of the Philippines, considered most likely to be attacked. Imperial General Headquarters had begun moving pieces into position in late July, stripping units from Manchuria, from China, from Korea, from the homeland itself. Every division that could be spared was being funneled toward the Philippines. Convoy, High 71, was one of the largest and most heavily defended of these reinforcement convoys. The high convoys, fast tanker and transport convoys running between Japan and Singapore, represented Japan's lifeline. They carried the petroleum that fueled the war machine. They brought raw materials north. They carried troops and equipment south. Losing a high convoy meant more than losing ships. It meant losing irreplaceable resources that Japan's shrinking industrial base could not replace. The afternoon of August 18th found Convoy High 71 steaming through the aftermath of a typhoon that had scattered the formation 2 days earlier. Heavy seas still rolled across the South China Sea. The convoy had reformed at Mako in the Pescadores on August 15th, adding 4 more Kaibokan escorts sent from Takao specifically to counter the American submarine threat. Intelligence knew American submarines hunted these waters. What intelligence did not know was how much American codebreakers knew about Japanese convoy movements. The signals intelligence operation called Magic had been reading Japanese naval codes since before Pearl Harbor. When Imperial Japanese Navy headquarters broadcast convoy routes and schedules, American cryptanalysts decrypted the messages within hours. Submarine commanders received warnings of approaching convoys with details of composition, course, and speed. They positioned their boats at optimal intercept points and waited. The Luzon Strait and South China Sea had become a killing ground. Two submarine wolf packs prowled the projected path of Convoy High 71. USS Spadefish and USS Redfish operated as Donk's Devils under Commander Glyn Donahoe. USS Rasher, USS Bluefish, and USS Raton formed the second group. These 5 submarines represented American submarine warfare at its deadliest. The boats carried the latest radar. Their crews were experienced. Their torpedoes, after years of frustrating malfunctions, finally worked reliably. USS Redfish found the convoy first on the evening of August 17th. Lieutenant Commander Louis McGregor maneuvered into position through the night, and at 5:24 on the morning of August 18th fired 5 torpedoes. Oiler Ayo Maru shuddered as one torpedo struck home. The damaged tanker slowed, turning back toward Takao, escorted by destroyers Asakaze and Unagi. The convoy had lost its first ship and 2 of its 3 destroyer escorts in the opening moments of contact. The Japanese formation pressed on, now stripped of a third of its destroyer screen. Admiral Kajioka had orders. The troops must reach Manila. The supplies must get through. Operation Show depended on these reinforcements. The convoy could not turn back. It could only steam forward into waters where American submarines waited in the darkness. As twilight approached on August 18th, USS Rasher cruised on the surface, recharging batteries and making good speed to reach an intercept position. Commander Henry Munson, who had taken command of Rasher just 3 weeks earlier, was already a decorated submarine commander with 2 Navy Crosses. He had commanded USS Creval through successful patrols. He had volunteered to take Rasher on what was supposed to be a simple transit to Pearl Harbor for overhaul. Instead, he found himself hunting in the South China Sea with orders to patrol west of Luzon. At 9 successive times during the afternoon, Rasher's lookouts spotted Japanese aircraft patrolling to the north. Munson's assessment was immediate, that many aircraft meant a major convoy. He ordered Rasher to close on the patrol area. As darkness fell and rain began, Rasher's radar operator called out contacts. 13 ships proceeding at 13 knots, protected by 6 escorts. Munson studied the radar returns and began his approach. The rules of submarine warfare in 1944 had evolved through 3 years of combat. American submarines stayed on the surface, using radar to track targets and darkness to hide their low silhouettes. They closed to point-blank range, fired spreads of torpedoes, then maneuvered for additional attacks. The Japanese escorts, lacking effective radar and trained primarily for convoy escort rather than aggressive anti-submarine warfare, struggled to counter these surface attacks. At 21:22, Munson ordered 2 stern torpedoes fired at a large tanker designated as Tayo Maru. Both torpedoes found their mark. The explosion lit the night sky. Tayo Maru, loaded with aviation gasoline, erupted in a column of flame that rose 1,000 feet into the air. Pieces of the ship were blown 500 yards from the burning wreck. The explosion was so massive that lookouts on every ship in the convoy saw it clearly. The escorts fired wildly in all directions, unable to locate the submarine that had just vaporized a tanker worth its weight in gold to fuel starved Japan. Munson swung Rasher to bring bow tubes to bear. At 22:14, he fired 4 torpedoes at what radar identified as an aircraft carrier. 3 torpedoes slammed into escort carrier Taiyu. The carrier, converted from a passenger liner, displaced 18,116 tons. She carried the 931st Naval Air Group with 12 attack planes that had been providing the convoy's air cover. Hit in her stern quarter, Taiyo burst into flames and sank 28 minutes later, taking approximately 790 of her crew to the bottom. Japan had lost another carrier, another precious aviation platform it could not replace. The convoy scattered in panic. Escorts raced about dropping depth charges on phantom contacts. Merchant captains ordered emergency turns. The careful formation dissolved into chaos as each ship maneuvered independently to escape the unseen killer. This was exactly what Munson wanted. At 23:10, Rasher fired 6 bow torpedoes at another large transport. 3 hit transport Tayo Maru, the former French luxury liner Aramis that Japan had seized in 1942. The 17,537-ton ship carried 5,478 soldiers and civilians, mostly Army Air Service personnel bound for Manila. The torpedoes struck her starboard side. Taya Maru erupted in flames and exploded at 23:40. 2,665 troops, civilians and crew died. Among them were aircraft maintenance, personnel desperately needed at Manila Air Depot, military government specialists, and individual replacements for units throughout the Southwest Pacific. The convoy split into groups as captains tried desperately to escape. Munson followed ships moving northwest. Just past midnight on August 19th, Rasher fired 4 bow torpedoes at a range of 2,200 yards. 3 torpedoes hit cargo transport Aishin Maru. The ship carried ammunition. The detonation was catastrophic. The pressure wave from the explosions swept across Rasher's bridge as the 542-ton freighter disintegrated. Munson swung Rasher hard right to bring stern tubes to bear. 2 torpedoes launched at 33 minutes past midnight. Both struck transport Noshiro Maru. The ship slowed to 5 knots, reversed course, and began firing at escort Etorofu, apparently believing the escort was the attacking submarine. In the confusion of darkness, explosions, and panic, Japanese ships were firing at each other while the actual attacker maneuvered unseen. While Rasher continued her attacks, USS Bluefish and USS Spadefish joined the assault on the scattered convoy. Lieutenant Commander Charles Henderson in Bluefish fired at ships fleeing southward. At 3:20 in the morning, his torpedoes found fleet oiler Hayasui. The 6,500-ton oiler burst into flames and sank. Captain Kizaburo Sugiura died with his ship. He was promoted to Rear Admiral posthumously. USS Spadefish, on her first war patrol under Lieutenant Commander Gordon Underwood, tracked northbound ships fleeing the carnage. At 3:33, Spadefish fired a spread of torpedoes at landing craft depot ship Tamatsu Maru. Multiple torpedoes struck the 9,589-ton vessel. She rolled over and sank so quickly that rescue was impossible. 4,890 people died, including 4,755 troops. Japanese sources simply recorded that Tamatsu Maru disappeared. The heavy seas prevented any effective rescue of those who made it into the water. As dawn approached, the escorts Sado, Matsuo, and Hiburi attempted to hold the American submarines down with depth charge attacks, while the damaged transports Noshiro Maru and Awa Maru beached themselves at Port Kurimau to avoid sinking. The undamaged ships took refuge in San Fernando. The carefully organized convoy had been shattered. Of the 13 merchant ships that had departed Mako, at least 5 were sunk, 2 were beached and damaged, and only 6 remained operational. With all torpedoes expended, Rasher set course for Midway. At Midway, Munson was called into a secret conference to compare his observations with decrypted Japanese message traffic. In a single night, the 3 American submarines had destroyed at least 6 ships, totaling more than 64,000 tons, and killed over 10,000 Japanese soldiers and sailors. USS Rasher's portion of this carnage represented one of the most successful submarine patrols of World War II. Post-war accounting verified that Rasher sank the highest tonnage of any U.S. submarine patrol to that date. Commander Munson's 5th patrol would result in his being awarded a 2nd Gold Star in lieu of a 3rd Navy Cross. The human cost of Convoy. High 71's destruction was staggering. Approximately 10,000 Japanese soldiers and sailors died in the attacks and drownings that followed. The heavy seas that had helped scatter the convoy now prevented effective rescue. Men who survived the torpedo explosions and got into the water-faced waves that swept them away from would-be rescuers. Lifeboats capsized, rafts were lost in the darkness. The death toll mounted throughout the night as exhausted swimmers succumbed to hypothermia and drowning. Among the dead were specialized units Japan desperately needed. The Army Air Service personnel aboard Taya Maru included mechanics, technicians, and pilots who were supposed to maintain and operate aircraft defending the Philippines. The landing craft depot ship Tamatsu Maru carried not just troops but equipment for amphibious operations. Infantry replacements for divisions already in the Philippines died before ever seeing combat. Each death represented training, experience, and equipment that Japan's shrinking industrial and manpower base could not replace. The strategic implications rippled through Imperial Japanese headquarters within days. On August 21st, what remained of Convoy High 71 limped into Manila. Transport Awa Maru was towed in. Noshiro Maru arrived on August 24th. But the reinforcements that had departed Moji with such hope were now a fraction of their original strength. The losses forced Imperial Japanese headquarters to move Japan's defensive perimeter back 1,000 kilometers. The three Kaibokan escorts Sado, Matsuwa, and Hiburi that had fought to protect the convoy tried to rejoin the formation at Manila. They never made it. USS Harder and USS Hado intercepted them. Harder torpedoed Matsuwa and Hiburi at 4:56 on August 24th. Hado torpedoed Sado at 5:24 while she was attempting to aid her stricken sister ships. The aftermath continued to unfold in the days following. Destroyers Asakaze and Unagi, which had departed Takao on August 21st to rejoin the convoy at Manila with tankers Hako Maru No. 2 and Neo Maru, were intercepted by the Wolfpack. Spadefish hit Hako Maru No. 2 with 2 torpedoes off Cape Bojador Lighthouse on August 22nd. The damaged tanker was beached. Unagi was relieved of responsibility for the beached tanker on August 25th and was sunk an hour later by USS Pikuda. Destroyer Asakaze escorted Neo Maru toward Manila. USS Hado hit Asakaze with its last torpedo at 0800 on August 23rd. As USS Hake and Harder approached to finish off the damaged destroyer, they were intercepted by coastal defense ship CD No. 22 and captured American destroyer patrol boat No. 102. Harder was spotted by a Japanese aircraft. At 0828, patrol boat No. 102 sank Harder with all hands. The South China Sea claimed victims from both sides. What remained of Convoy High 71 departed Manila on August 26th for Singapore. The convoy now consisted of just a handful of oilers and cargo ships, escorted by destroyer Fujinami and 3 Kaibokan. They reached Singapore on September 1st, but the reinforcements they were supposed to deliver to the Philippines never arrived. The Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944 would vindicate Admiral Toyoda's assessment of the Philippines' strategic importance. When American forces landed at Leyte on October 20th, Japan activated Operation Show 1, committing virtually every remaining capital ship to destroy the invasion fleet. The battle resulted in the destruction of Japan's surface fleet as an effective fighting force. 4 aircraft carriers, 3 battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, 4 light cruisers, and 11 destroyers were sunk. The American invasion succeeded.